If you felt stuck trying to lose weight, you're not alone. Enter Weight Loss by Hers. It's designed to support you in reaching your goals. And Hers now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hers, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first GLP-1 available in a pill, so there are no needles needed. Everything is 100% online through Hers. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hers makes it simple to find an approach that fits your needs and your budget if eligible. You'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. It's weight loss designed to work with your life. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/women to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's forhers.com/women. forhers.com/women. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A/S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com.
Robots Radio. Games, lore, stories, community. Just press play. Welcome to the Fallout Lorecast, the podcast that explores the boundaries of our knowledge about the world of Fallout. One of the reasons why I love Fallout so much is that the setting and the different characters, the factions, the world, the monsters lend themselves so well to a variety of different ways that you can engage with them. Now, what I'm talking about is how Fallout over time has changed the way, or at least the games have changed, and the way we engage with the games are different. In the early days, you had kind of this isometric RPG setup, and then eventually they did tactics games, and then you had a first-person RPG with the Bethesda Fallouts, and then eventually multiplayer. There's also tabletop versions of Fallout. Modiphius has a kind of like a D&D-esque kind of role-play system, but then they also have Wasteland Warfare, which is more of a squad-based combat kind of system, but it's not massive and large like Warhammer 40K. And that's why I'm doing this episode this week. I have a very wonderful guest with me in order to talk about how we could take Fallout and make it a massive war game. Something way bigger than anything Modiphius has done so far. Something on par with Warhammer 40K, with different factions and different settings and different special effects and abilities. And this is going to be a wonderful conversation because Brad is from the 40K Lorecast and he knows his stuff. He's been playing these games since the 1980s. And I'll just tell you now, I'm patting ourselves on the back because we already did the interview that you're about to hear. And some of these ideas are really, really cool. I'm excited for you to hear them. And I'm also excited to get your perspectives as well. Please comment. And if we missed an idea that seemed obvious or something that maybe a genius idea that you have about the way that you could make this work, let me know. Who knows? Maybe in the future we'll get a massive Fallout war game. All right, enjoy the conversation. I'll see you on the other side. All right, joining me this week is a wonderful guest, a man who is known for his extremely popular 40K Lorecast and his new History of 40K podcasts, and a guy who has been playing tabletop and war gaming games. I don't even know the right way to say these things. and video games like Fallout since, as we were joking in the pre-show, the dawn of time. This is Brad from the 40K Lorecast joining me again. Brad, it's so good to talk to you again. Welcome back.
this guy, so I can be continuous on how I show up at every single cast.
Nice.
It's great to have it, man. I'm really excited to be here. I love talking pretty much anything gaming, and I've been doing it. When we joke about that, you say like I've been gaming since the beginning of time, but I'm an old man and I have been playing video games since, well, the late 80s. So
yeah, and
it's been a while.
Yeah, and you have a lot more experience with the tabletop side of it and wargaming. And of course, I'm stumbling over my words, so you can fill in the gaps on that stuff for me. But the reason I'm bringing you back this week is to take a look at Fallout and how Fallout would make sense as a war game, like little models and units, moving them around. And believe me, somebody is already yelling at their speakers going, well, wait a minute, doesn't Fallout already have a tabletop system and a war game? What about Wasteland Warfare? And you and I have been discussing this. Those systems they line up more on the role-playing side and less on the wargaming 40K massive army kind of thing that you are more familiar with. So I thought it would be fun to get together and brainstorm with you. How would Fallout work in a massive wargaming sense? And I believe it would. And one of the reasons 100%. For that. Yeah. And one of the reasons for that is that every time I talk to people, they talk about, oh, well, my favorite faction is this. I love the Brotherhood of Steel, or I love the Enclave, or man, it would be really cool to be a super mutant in the games, that kind of thing. And I can just imagine a system where you sit at a huge table, you've got a gigantic map of the wasteland, and you are rolling out the Brotherhood, and maybe I'm bringing a bunch of super mutants, and we are going toe to toe with massive units and all sorts of different things going on. So I wanted to get into that. But before we can start in the details, can you explain to us the difference between those systems? Like what makes something a little bit more role playing? What makes something more wargaming setup? What is the difference between, say, D&D and 40K? How does that work?
So one of the biggest differences is D&D, 40K, any of the tacticals like that. We're playing on a larger scale. 40K is played on a 60-inch by 44-inch board. So, and you have right now it's 2,000 points, which means nothing if you don't know the cost of the units. But there's a lot of stuff. The games are 3 hours long with a lot of things happening on this.
Like you need a massive like dining room table kind of setup
100%.
Just to play.
That is funny that you say that one. The 40K actually shrunk their tables down about 10 years ago, specifically to be GW Games Workshop is based out of England. They said the average dining room table is this, so they made it that. So yeah, that's exactly how it's played on.
Yeah.
But you need more, and it's more. It is a skirmish game, but it's a much larger game. When you're looking at warfare versus 40K, you've got a lot of individual models on the board for warfare. And
Wasteland Warfare, specifically
Wasteland Warfare,
the Fallout sort of wargaming version.
And you're looking at a lot of units of guys between 5, 10, 15, 20 people in any one squad can be there. You know, you've got your big things, your tanks, your monsters, which would be something like, a super mutant. But super mutants could possibly be in squads. There's big things in squad in 40K. It's just a more of a grander scale. You need more.
Yeah.
And that's one of the bigger things is just like, hey, what do you have on the table? Well, you're going to have more things. The warfare for Fallout right now is more of they have a very small board. And you do a lot of individual movements. It goes 1, 1, 1. 40K plays, everybody moves all of their stuff. You have a couple effectively interrupts that you can do in fighting and stuff like that. But for the most part, one side takes their turn. So in 40K, in a lot of the big games like that, I have the top of a turn. So we have 5 turns. You go on top of one, then I go on bottom of one, so on and so forth. And again, you have certain interrupts and whatnot. But for the most part, I have to do all of my stuff. And that is because there's so many units on the board. I'm going, at the time of this recording, in a week, I'm going to a tournament, and I've got 17 scoring units, and I'm bringing over 100 and some models. And that doesn't include characters that are attached to units. So making it Fallout into a larger game like this, we want to put more units and flesh out the factions more. One of the things that I really like, but if you're making it a larger game, if you're looking at Fallout on a large tabletop game, is you would just need more and a little bit more development of the faction. And there's tons of really cool things you can do with that. And when you brought this up as an idea, and I got really excited about it because I started putting down, well, what would the faction rules be? Because any game that you're playing, you want your faction to be much, much different than another faction.
Right.
For instance, if I'm playing Enclave, I don't want it to be the same thing as the Brotherhood, even though we're going to have a lot of crossover units.
Right.
So you'd have
right. Which happens in 40K because you have many different units that are, Imperium or, armies of man and that kind of thing. But they are distinctly different from each other because of the selection of different types of units, or even similar looking units have different abilities and they function completely different at times.
And that's the thing is you have to have that overarching detachment. Like, what are you playing? And you want it to have a good rule. And the thing is that no one wants to feel that they're playing the samey. Again, I'm going to go and claim in Brotherhood because a lot of the things would be the same, but you'd have to have, for me, the Enclave would have some more conniving, they'd have things that could interrupt and mess with your opponent.
Right.
Because like in 40K, for instance, we have detachment rules. You get a specific thing for playing this, whether it's plus to strength, plus my detachment rule for the game I'm going to be playing is when I charge, I have +2 strength and +1 attack. That is what they have as their overarching detachment.
And that's what makes them different from anybody else, because only those units and only your side is going to have that.
Right. And then we have what's called stratagems, which almost any game's going to have some sort of cost mechanic is in game. You have command points in 40K. You've got different stuff in Warfare. I actually put it down. I played a TTS game of it, but tabletop simulator.
Yeah.
But you always have a resource that you're managing. We have stratagems. You have 6 stratagems per army, and you can do special things at certain times.
Right.
So you'd have to have those per faction also. Just something that makes, hey, I'm going to spend a token, I'm going to spend a cap, I'm going to spend whatever, however you're doing
something that's going to be important that you can do only a few times when you really need it.
Right.
And you kind of pull it out. It's your special thing. It's kind of like an ultimate in a video game, or it's that thing and it distinctly makes you different from the other side.
And it's just, you want that because you want everybody to feel that their faction is worthwhile. And this is how it's so hard to balance any war game.
Yeah.
It's very easy when the game master or the game itself, if you're playing in a video game, they can just change, code. They can updates all the time.
Yeah.
When you're playing a war game, if one side's wildly better than the other, all of a sudden it doesn't feel good, even though you have your feel for your particular faction.
Right.
So
right.
very hard to
It's
manage.
asymmetrical too. It's distinctly different. So that is a wonderful overview of a lot of the stuff that we're going to go through. But here, let's take it a little bit piece by piece.
100%.
A lot of people are familiar with playing Dungeons and Dragons. When they think role playing or tabletop, they think Dungeons and Dragons. And with Dungeons and Dragons, you can either play theater of the mind, or you can pull out your little units and put them on a board and move them around. There's different ways to engage with that. But the perspective of D&D is very much you are playing one character, you are part of a party of characters, and the DM is running the rest of the world. And you could have multiple sessions. On one session, you might be adventuring through a forest to get to a dungeon, and you come across a bunch of monsters, and so maybe there's a lot of fighting. And another session, you get to the dungeon, it turns out it's a castle, and there's a party, and you have to spend a lot of time communicating with people and figuring out how to solve a puzzle, or those kinds of things, right?
I'm going to be running this Saturday, and you're telling me right now I need to change some stuff because the party always changes everything.
The party always changes everything, yeah.
And that's why wargaming's so different.
Right.
I play both of them because
right.
It's a different taste for each time.
Right. And then you get to something that's a little bit more wargamey, which is like Fallout Wasteland Warfare. And that feels a little bit more squad-based, a limited amount of units like you were describing. And it's more about going into a situation and the combat in that specific situation. And then we get fully into wargaming, which is like 40K, and you've got, a few dozen characters on your side of the board, and the other guy's got a few dozen characters on his side of the board, and you've got all this terrain and buildings and broken down stuff or whatever. And then you take your turn, you move all your little dudes, you do your little attacks, and then I take my turn, I move all my guys, I do all my attacks, we use our special abilities, whatever. And then by the end of it, whoever wins the combat. There's no greater story. There's no individual, I'm this commander and these are my forces or anything like that. You are the entire army. So that is the distinct difference. And that's the direction we're taking Fallout in for this. And
go ahead. You have a different, there you go. Well, feel free to take that out or leave it in if people could know exactly how I talk on a regular basis, what John has to deal with. So one of the big things about that, though, is you have missions in any game of wargaming, period, be it 40K, be it anything I've played. And you can go from one spectrum of specific just battle to all the way to very scenario driven. And it can be anyways.
Right.
I don't want to.
Like you have to capture a point on the map, and so now that point is being contested, and there's rules around what you get when you capture it or when you don't. And so that can play out very differently.
I don't want to make anybody feel that there's only a tactical, because there's a lot of story that goes behind these factions. There's so much story that goes from them, and a lot of people can play. That's what I say, anything from what's called narrative to here. But we're trying to make Fallout into that, and I encourage people to look into that. I've got asked a lot of times in our Discord of putting 40K into role playing, or putting 40K into more of a skirmish based army.
The other flipping it around the other way.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of that. So I like either way on that, because I think that Fallout has a lot of potential to be a larger war game, because a lot of things have happened in there. I mean, just look at New Vegas and the battles they fought there.
Yeah.
Those are war game battles.
Well, imagine if you could recreate Hoover Dam and the NCR versus the Legion. That would be a really, really cool setup, because you have a very specific kind of map. You've got one army on the one side, one army on the other side. They're distinctly different. And you could recreate the battle. Maybe the battle plays out a different way in your version. That could be really cool.
I'd say that's one of the biggest things that I was thinking when you asked me about this idea was, man, I'd love to recreate that. I'd love to recreate. I mean, one of my favorites in Fallout 3, when you go into the library and they're having a huge battle, it's all of it's just mercs and everybody else versus super mutants.
Yeah.
And like, that is a large battle when you kind of maneuver your way throughout. And of course, you're the main character, so you do huge amounts of damage, but there's a huge battle going on and you're just kind of part of it. And they have all these things over on the side. I'd love to see that. The board you're playing on makes a huge difference and I'd love to see that and make each one of the factions themselves. I mean, think about just Raiders themselves. That's a wild faction, and they have there's a ton of them too. It would be a huge faction.
Right.
Well, in my mind, there's a lot of stuff that goes in. So every time you play a game, a 40K game, for instance, but any war game, you're going to have, if you and I are going to play, say I'll do 40K. We play 2,000 points. Mm-hmm. So every unit has to have a cost. When I think Raiders would be a horde army. Maybe you have 150 models plus on the board. Yeah.
Each unit is really, really small in the sense of cost, right? Because it's easy to shoot a raider in the head and you just lose him, right? But it's going to be a horde of like 50 of them.
It's just, you got to have like a ton of them on the board. And I like that quite a bit. And flip that with, other armies. There's just not going to be a ton of, say, super mutants on the board, because of the fact that they're individually powerful. So you have to go, how much
more
is
resilient. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you're thinking about, because like in 40K, for instance, even in Warfare, the Wasteland Warfare, they have, stats for how they're wounding stuff and who's tougher and what, how much damage you can take. For instance, a raider would probably have one wound. So if he, gets hit and he gets wounded, he's probably gone. Well, a super mutant's what? 10, 12, maybe, maybe more wounds on the table because he can be shot multiple times. But then you have to ask, what are these worth points wise? How many raiders does equals one super mutant?
Yeah. Is it like four raiders equals one super mutant? What about a guy in power armor? What if it's a brotherhood? Right. What if it's a T45? What if it's a enclave power armor? That's probably even more powerful. Like, yeah. So you got to balance all of that out. But here, let's go through. We already kind of started in on the factions. Let's go through the factions and just kind of brainstorm a little bit.
Rock me head. Can't be contained, Tom.
Let's go. Let's do this in order so our audience knows where we are. Okay, let's start with the Brotherhood of Steel. Clearly, this would be, in my mind, and feel free to correct me if you have other ideas on this, it would be less units, but more powerful units. You would have everything from your grunt soldiers, your squires, your individual, less armored individuals who are kind of your support, I would set up and maybe just, lay down some cover fire and that sort of thing. But then you would have your power armor soldiers.
You put the paladins and stuff on the board.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic on that. And I love that for I'll do it. They use a lot more dice in Wasteland Warfare, but like in 40K, for instance, we use 6-sided. So you have a hit, you have to wound, they get an armor save. When I think of the Brotherhood, they would have a great armor save. For instance, if you're doing D6s in 40K, they would definitely have a 2+ save, which means I only have to roll a 2 on the die. And then you have modifications for, what I got shot with, because it makes a big difference if you got shot with
small arms versus an RPG versus
exactly.
a tank.
If that super mutant pulls that minigun out, I'm going to have a less chance to save.
Right. But
that individual, super tough, very hard to wound and really great save is what I would think of the Brotherhood of Steel. Just a lot of not very many models, but very, very durable type models. Mm-hmm. And Brotherhood of Steel, guys that really have a great save. When they get shot, they have a good chance to just not take that damage. And then you compare and contrast that to super mutants, also an army that would have not that many models, but super mutants would have just more wounds and toughness, where the Brotherhood might only have a couple wounds per guy. They don't get wounded very much because of the excellence of their power armor, depending on what style of power armor they're in too.
Right.
But like super mutants might just go, hey, I've taken 10 wounds and I'm still not dead because I'm a super mutant. And or in 40K, for instance, we have a mechanic called Feel No Pain. If you fail to save, you have on a specific die roll, you can just ignore some of the wounds. Super mutants that have something of that nature where they just keep coming no matter how much damage they have. Similar in the fact that there's not that many models on the board, though. 100% I agree that it would be a low model count, but then they have a wildly different way that they play. As far as how they do that. The other thing is I don't want to be in melee combat with a super mutant either.
Right.
Think about
in fact, maybe they can even pick you up and throw you if you're just like a regular person, that kind of thing. Like,
that's it. Always think about when you're playing, you're always like, oh no, you're getting too close. Stay over here. I got to put some more VATS on you. There's more headshots in your future. Get away from me.
Yeah. Don't hit me with a super sledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much. Yes.
I would also imagine that the Brotherhood could potentially have jetpacks on their power armor troopers or have vertibirds. So in some ways they could be more mobile. Say a super mutant probably would travel further than a regular person because they're bigger, they take longer strides. But then if you bring a vertibird in, you could fly across the map and drop soldiers off on another location.
100%. And they've got different just vehicles themselves, depending on, what game you're talking about at that point in time. They've got different mobile aircraft vehicles, and you could have those have stats in themselves if you want them on the table. So you could get your guys out. You could have firing decks where they could shoot out.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of that. I mean, that was in.
Yeah, you got a bunch of troops on the vertibird and somebody takes down the vertibird and all the troops die with it. Yeah, because the whole thing crashes.
I like that quite a bit on that because there's just a lot of. You always have to have a bonus and a negative on things. What is the. I have super tough guys. Oh, but there's not very many of them. I have super durable guys, but they have a bad save. So if you just shot, hey, maybe the next detachment, we talk about raiders. Raiders might individually get murdered by super mutants.
Sure. Yeah.
But if you have, and you've watched this in the game, and even in the role play game and Wasteland Warfare and stuff like that, if you just get a ton of raiders, well, you can take down the super mutant because he just gets death by 1,000 cuts.
Right.
And I
Right.
love the idea of that. And also you look at the skill levels. What does it take to hit? What am I rolling on a D6, a D12, a D20? If I'm looking at, a Brotherhood of Steel, maybe he hits on a 3. Maybe a Raider hits on a 4 or a 5 at least. He's this difference in skills a lot. So you have to, you have
he's
more of
less
them.
officially trained and more just living by his grit.
The guy wearing the leather vest should with the weird goggles. Also, why are the Raiders always wearing the weirdest
right
glasses?
Yeah, because they're just putting together whatever they can get, and they all just love the Mad Max movies. So I would also imagine. So let's move in from Brotherhood and Super Mutants. So, Super Mutants. The other thing I would add in is like a behemoth unit. You could have
huge.
Maybe one behemoth on the board, or maybe that's a special event where the behemoth comes out. Maybe there's some sort of mutation thing that happens where all of a sudden a unit gets stronger or bigger, something like that.
Well, that's how you get that's how you make your factions more fleshed out too, to make them larger, because you need more units, you need more things on the board.
Yeah.
Like Wasteland Warfare is a very small game. It's very small units, but if you want to make it a war game, these bigger battles, you need to have the difference between some of these. What type of super mutants do you have out? What type of Brotherhood of Steel armors out there?
Right.
And they would have, of course, different costs on that. But I really would love to see like the bigger, we have the behemoths on the board, but you also have a lot of different super mutants that you've seen in the game themselves.
Yeah. Some of them are more armored, or you could have different, there's West Coast and East Coast super mutants. There are differences between the two. You can have, some of them have dogs with them. You can have a variety of different ways to set that up. But I had another idea for Raiders as you were talking about it. They are all drugged up. So their thing would be like they inject themselves with jet or something, and all of a sudden they become more deadly, but they're also maybe there's drawbacks to that too because they're on freaking drugs.
I love that because we have a mechanic in 40K, for instance, that you could definitely use with that, called hazardous. You roll, you get extra attacks and stuff, or you get a better gun but it's dangerous. So at the end of the turn, you have to roll for every guy. In 40K, for instance, it would be hazardous. We roll D6s. On a 1, you would take damage.
Yeah, like they can overdose.
Yep. And I love the idea of that, because you just have raiders hopped up on jet, running at you. Either that, they're taking tons of buff out. They're rocking in.
Right.
But there is danger to that. Yes, I love that in the game, because you have high risk, high reward. Yeah, my guys could just die from this, but I get extra movement, extra attacks and stuff like that. I think that the Raider faction, I'm also known to be the guy that plays a ton of trash in any war game. So that makes me super happy anyways. I'm like, I would love to just put a bunch of nonsense on the board with all these crazy Raiders coming at you with everything that they picked up from the wastelands and just attacking you with them.
Cobbled together vehicles. I know that one of the running jokes is the Bethesda games don't have cars in them, but you could have, motorcycles or cars. Again, the Mad Max kind of thing, and have them all on these, pieced together pieces of junk.
That is one thing that I really want in the game that they don't have in the game. And I'd love to see it on the war game, and people would say that there isn't any, but man, I'd love to have vehicles.
You could drive a car in Fallout 2. That was a thing. So
you did drive the car in Fallout 2.
It was a thing. Yeah.
It's how you got from point A to point B.
Right. So we got Raiders, we got Brotherhood, we've got Super Mutants. You said earlier the Enclave, and I agree with this, the Enclave and the Brotherhood would be similar. You'd have similar, powerful, armored kinds of characters. But I like the idea about having a little bit more subterfuge on the Enclave side. You could have characters that can communicate at a distance, that know things that other characters don't. Do you have any other ideas about how that would play out?
I thought about this a lot. I think that one of the big things in any war game is movement outside of the movement phase,
Mm,
being able to reactively move, being able to redeploy, being able to what it's called in 40K, for instance, and not a game, it's called uppy downy, picking a unit up and then being able to put it down in another turn somewhere else on the
right.
board.
Right.
That is the kind of thing that I think Enclave could do. And you could just say that they bring in vertibirds and stuff like that,
Yeah.
pick up a unit and put it somewhere on the other side of the board. So maybe they don't have as many units and they'd be very similar to the Brotherhood, but they have more movement shenanigans that
Hmm.
are on the board. I like that a lot. And or just you come in with reserves later on and they can come in surgical strikes because the Enclave is just constantly doing whatever it is underhanded, the Enclave's doing it. So we
Right.
can
Right.
maybe also it couldn't be just as movement, but maybe you could hinder your opponent's movement on that because
True.
you were doing something to cut them down. I like the idea of that a lot because the Enclave has more information than everybody else as far as what's going on and doesn't help with anything. So it's
Yeah.
always,
Yeah.
I would actually say that they would hinder your opponent more so than move them.
I like that. I like that. I like the idea of like iBot scouts you could put on the battlefield that would give you buffs in certain areas because they know more, or stealth boys, the use of stealth boys, or the fact that maybe they have accumulated, I don't know, Chinese stealth suit tech and are using that to their advantages. So I think that plays out really well for the Enclave. Let's talk about the NCR. I feel like is probably the most normal feeling of the groups.
I like the NCR and the fact that you make them the base. Like for instance,
Yeah.
in 40K,
Right.
Space Marine, regular Space Marines, the Ultramarines and stuff are kind of the default. Like this is what the game's kind of based on.
Right.
I see the NCR as that, and you're looking at Fallout for a larger war game. This has a good amount of different units, but they don't have super crazy rules. They have something that someone could pick up and start playing.
Yeah,
and it
fairly
doesn't
good
require-
equipment.
Yep.
They're fairly well trained. They're all regular people for the most part, or non-feral ghouls.
Yeah.
They might have some slightly better cobbled together tech or armor that they got from other places, but for the most part, they're kind of the milquetoast option, and they're effective when played correctly, but they're not as flashy as some of the other groups.
It's the army that you take to get into the game, which
Yeah.
isn't bad. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's still the most popular thing in 40K, for instance, is regular Marines on that. But like you have to have the baseline of the game, and I think NCR is that, and I think that they'd be great on it. You could also have things like the NCR could have fortifications and things that they set up because in the game they actually have lots of different forward deploying type fortified spots. They have
Yeah.
FOBs that basically they put up. I would love that. I could see NCR having the largest amount of different types of units because they also have a lot of characters. So.
Right. Yes. And so how would you contrast the NCR with the Legion? Because I feel like the Legion would, even though they visually would be very different, you would have, again, a lot of trained soldiers with fairly good equipment, a lot of regular human type units, but they are not the same as the NCR.
No. And I would do that as far as it goes into a lot of the character of the army. I think that you'd have different characters with different abilities that lead stuff. So they'd be very similar in setup and like things that are taken, but you'd have different ways that they play different bonuses. I'd like to see a lot of character stuff. I mean, you have different of the Caesar's top guys rocking in. They give them wildly different abilities for very similar units. Obviously
Right.
they have the Legionnaires and they call them something different, but like very similar because they have a lot of just humans,
Yeah.
But I think that you'd have a lot depending on who gets put in for special rules on that.
Yeah, like ideological buffs. Like
Yes.
they really believe in what they're doing, even though they're absolutely terrible. And-
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and they're terrible.
Yeah.
But that's a big thing on that because we have a lot of games have that. Depending on who you're led by, that unit would have leaders that are really give them buffs. So the leadership of the unit gets changed depending on who you put in, and I think they'd have a lot of different people leading each individual unit of. My vernacular died. You'd have a lot of different units or different unit leaders they gave the units different abilities was what I would think in the Legion itself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Give it a lot of flavor for that.
Right. It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now, you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. You can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time, and I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable, and I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/falloutlore.
If you felt stuck trying to lose weight, you're not alone. Enter Weight Loss by Hers. It's designed to support you in reaching your goals. And Hers now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hers, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first GLP-1 available in a pill, so there are no needles needed. Everything is 100% online through Hers. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hers makes it simple to find an approach that fits your needs and your budget if eligible. You'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. It's weight loss designed to work with your life. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/women to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's forhers.com/women. forhers.com/women. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A.S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com.
And then we go to the Institute, going to Fallout 4, and the Institute, you mentioned the ability to, like, the ups and downs, the ability to travel somewhere.
I said that's what I was thinking, and I said the Enclave should probably just hinder people, because I was thinking later, I'm like, oh crap, I didn't talk about the Institute yet. The Institute should have the ability to uppy downy, to be anywhere they want. They're the only people with teleport technology and stuff. You know, I would love to see the Institute, and I don't know how you would balance this, but we used to have this a long time ago, like 20 years ago, the ability to take over and infiltrate the other side, because the Institute can do that. So you could just start on the other side of the board, or you could pop up in the middle of the game inside your opponent's deployment zone, or, you know, you could do a lot of nonsense. And that would be an army. Institute would be the army that everybody hates, but also it's hard to play because you'd have a lot of things that are very, very fragile with wild special rules, crazy movement, but you wouldn't have that much stuff. You'd have limited models that had a lot of abilities, but weren't as tough as power armor, and they weren't as tough as a super mutant. So you'd have to leverage the fact that you have better movement and that you have different special powers that you could harass and basically do things. I play one of the many armies I play in 40K kind of does that. So like that's right up my jam on
little
that.
more trolley type of army compared
Well,
to the others.
you make them fragile, but like they're glass cannons because they
Yeah.
have all this movement and they've got this power and they can do stuff. But also
They got some cool weapons,
you know,
and they got some, like the synths. The later iterations of synths become a little bit more. Well, I guess they become more human, but the early ones are more Terminators. And then you like, to your idea, if you were playing, say, NCR versus Institute, and there's a bunch of regular humans on the NCR side, having the ability to just kind of a very small chance, but like one of their units is actually Institute, and all of a sudden it swaps sides.
Yep.
Like it's
you
just
can
like
do crazy stuff. I love the idea of that. And the thing is that you could do a bunch of shenanigans, but also, if you're standing next to a paladin or you're standing next to a super mutant, well, he's still going to kill you. So even though you've got, this list of special rules that you have for your unit, in the end, a guy could just punch you in the head. That's why I really think that would be a great faction in a war game, because it would be very frustrating to play with and against, because the skill cap's very high, but also the risks are the punishment for something not working.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So the army that I think would be the most fun would be something like feral ghouls and monsters. And
I love the idea.
It would be like a horde type army, something where you have a variety of different kinds of units, and they can. I don't know how you would set it up, because maybe they're all unified by some sort of bigger monster of some sort.
You could do it on depending on the boards and stuff like that, because they've had monster armies before in a lot of different games on this, and you just kind of go, they're just trying to end you because you showed up here,
right?
And I like the idea of maybe even feral ghouls getting more powerful during the battle, depending on if they're in radiation, they can load ones.
Map locations. Like if there's an irradiated lake, all of the ghouls run into the lake, and now they're glowing ones, and they've now leveled up. Or maybe they could hide units. Maybe there are Mirelurks in the lake, but the other team doesn't know that at the beginning. That kind of thing.
I mean, there's so many on that. Mirelurks. Sorry, I was getting.
Can you imagine a Mirelurk queen busting out of a lake in the middle of the map, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my god, what? That was in there?" Yeah,
there's a ton of that, and there's a ton of just monsters that you could pull out. There's a huge amount of different monsters. I mean, just even from anything like, hey, over here I brought a ton of rad scorpions. Anything. That would be a great army, because it also have. It could either be a huge horde, or it could be some of these giant monsters.
Yeah.
And you could choose which, again, you'd have a point selection of maybe this one's, 300 points, and a bunch of rad scorpions are 3 points apiece kind of thing. And, you could bring 1,000,000 of this, or you could bring a couple of it, or you could mix and match. I think that it makes for a very, kind of like I said with Raiders on that, you have so much mix of what are they bringing.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, going back a little bit for the Raiders on that, is just them kind of finding, because think about how often you're in the game and Raiders just have something that they found. I'd love that.
Right. Or they pick up weapons that other characters drop, and all of a sudden they become more powerful. Yeah.
Yep. And with the feral ghouls and the monsters kind of army, you have kind of an endless supply of what you're doing on that. Are you doing a bunch of guys running at me in Fall Harbor?
Yeah, is it like zombie apocalypse, or is it like Fallout 76 brought in cryptids? So maybe their special thing is that at some point they get to leverage a cryptid onto the map somewhere. All of a sudden, a Mothman just drops in, and
there could be another reason why they're actually there, though. They're getting controlled. You know what I mean? So that faction has all of the possibilities. That could be multiple factions inside a faction. What we do in 40K is we have detachments inside the faction. So you have an overarching faction, and then you have somewhere between 4 and 6 detachments of that. So
there's variety. Yeah.
Right. I like that one's exciting. I'd love to play that. Right. I want to make that happen right now.
Yeah.
Just
that's
a large board of that.
Yeah. So that's most of the ones that come to mind. I'm sure you could put together, like, I don't know, a house faction it's somehow it doesn't stand out.
Somebody's going to yell at us for
as,
never talking about like the Minutemen or anything else.
Yeah, you could do the Minutemen, but like a lot of that stuff, like NCR and Minutemen, I feel like would be part of the same.
Yeah, the Minutemen would be a choice out of NCR
subgroups. Like, yes, anybody who's going to yell at the speakers and be like, well, the NCR and the Minutemen don't know each other. They're on different sides of the map. Absolutely. I get it. But like the main thing would be like regular human army. And these would be variations on regular human army. Right. So that's where I would put something like the Minutemen. And you could probably spend another hour going through all the different potential factions or sub-factions and different types of equipment that they could use and different kinds of monsters that you put together that would make sense in a group. But that's part of the fun of this, is that, yeah, if you had all of these options and you were working on, well, this is the army I want to make, you would be able to cater that to exactly what you wanted to do. You could go really, really into subtlety and like that side of the Enclave, but maybe you go into more of the just highly equipped power armor side of the Enclave. Maybe
you just go, I only had power armor and vertebrates coming at you.
Yeah.
You could make this, this is already what we do in big wargaming in 40K, is that. You see some people show up with the exact same. I'll give an example of armies I'll see next weekend in the Ultramarines, or the Marines, the basic marine on that. Ultramarines sometimes show up with all vehicles. It's all tanks and big stuff. And other times you see them playing almost all guys, infantry and stuff come on.
Ground soldiers.
And it's the same thing, but that's a different detachments inside, different armies. You could do the same thing inside the Enclave. You could have those different type things inside the monsters and ghouls army. You could have, some people just bring a million little guys. Some people bring big things, that's the joy of making an army. I get pretty nerded out when I think about just making.
Yeah.
I love making armies. I'm thinking about that.
Right. Yeah. And like, with the Brotherhood, you could have different groups of the Brotherhood. You could have, like, there's all sorts of varieties. You could have people who have pieced together Brotherhood equipment and are calling themselves Brotherhood members who aren't.
Yeah.
You could have,
I was to say, that's happened quite a bit.
Right. You could have factions of offshoots, Brotherhood offshoots. You could have the West Coast Brotherhood. You could have the East Coast Brotherhood. So you have all these different groups, right? So I think that lends itself to all the flexibility that makes that fun. But I think another piece of this, like you said, are the maps, the settings. Having something like a broken down DC area with all the busted buildings, and maybe you're fighting around the Washington Monument or something like that, versus a West Coast setting that is mostly, I don't know, you could do New Vegas. You could do a fight on the Strip. For some reason, somebody invaded the Strip and there's a fight on the Strip, or the Dam, or just out in the desert somewhere with all sorts of weird radiation. Or are any settings? Do any settings come to mind for you that you would definitely want to visit?
Setting wise, one of the things is I love to have, and for me in Fallout, you have to have settings, the maps that you're playing on, the settings that you're playing on have to have uniqueness and danger, because there has to be some ways, be it pools of radiation, be it other things could possibly attack you if you get, inside them, and they give you cover, but you might get attacked by other creatures that are in there.
Yeah, House's robots are protecting the Strip, and if you get too close to the middle of the Strip, they attack you, and it doesn't matter what side you're on. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Just that. Those are the kind of things that I'm looking for if I'm playing a Fallout war game. Is I want the map, the terrain itself, the setting itself, to have an impact on what we're playing, no matter what army you're playing. So like things that you're looking at, you come into the Commonwealth, well, there's a lot of things that can attack you. There's a whole bunch of different, you might even get, Mr. Handy might attack you at some point in time, but there's a lot of things that are there that could come after you. And the fact is, I like the idea of it being dangerous, and also, is it interactable? If I just take minigun fire, is this going to fall down? Because, in Fallout, there's just so much stuff that is the terrain becomes a part of the game on that. And I would love to see that. And obviously you have the pieces your opponent, you and your opponent go over what they are. Don't spring it on them. Don't do this game in your house and then tell your
Right.
friends to come over and let them know halfway through the game that the entire second floor is going to fall down. But, I would love to see the difference in all of those. I mean, you'd have a lot of, I mean, this is more difficult plan, but you go into Appalachia, you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
have all of the different vertical distances and stuff like that. And it would be a different style of play on that. So,
Right, a mountainous area. In
Yep.
fact, even the Fallout 76 map is so big. There are all these different sections of the map with different biomes and other things going on there. Creatures that might live in the map that aren't controlled by either party, but that, like you get too close to them, that's a problem.
I really want that. I just think
yeah.
that you should have the danger of either side.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got great cover, but there's also the chance that, like you were saying, robots to show up and just start hitting you. Hey, you get a great
Right.
save and you might be very defensive, but there's also X amount of chance that, hey, you got a little too close. You're gonna take some laser shots now.
Yeah. All of a sudden a sheep squatch comes, out of the forest next to you or something. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think all of that makes sense. And you could even expand the settings into locations that are discussed in the lore, but we haven't really seen in the games, or DLC locations. There's all sorts of different ways that you could set that up. And I would love to hear anybody listening. If we've somehow skipped over something that you're like, oh no, this is absolutely the thing you need to do, comment, let us know. But one of the other pieces to this that really pulls it together would be the uniqueness of the rule set, not just the uniqueness of the factions and their abilities and how they respond to things. And we've talked about this a little bit, the idea that you could have an irradiated lake somewhere and the radiation would do a thing. So if you are an NCR trooper, maybe that radiation is real bad. But if you are a ghoul, that radiation is real good.
Really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's different for different. Maybe there's chemical
super
spills.
You just ignore it. So.
Yeah. Maybe there's FEV chemical vats on one section of the map. And so maybe you want to avoid those. But are there any other things that you would throw in here that would be particularly Fallout-y?
I think that you would I'd like to be able to buy upgrades for the terrain based on what you're playing on.
Oh,
That would be specific to your faction.
Mm-hmm.
Things just like that. Hey, I have a pool and I can put it somewhere on the battlefield. If I'm playing the ghouls, maybe I could put a fortification. I'm playing NCR. I want to play forward deploying.
Or the Legion. Yeah.
Legion,
I want
exactly.
I want some walls that I can hide my guys behind. Yeah.
Right. I'd love to see that and be specific to your faction. I love the idea of, because if I'm playing Fallout, I don't want it to be faceless, nameless soldiers and faceless, nameless monsters. I want it to be Fallout soldiers and Fallout monsters.
Right.
So like things of that nature, anything that makes the game feel, in the end, I'm still an RPG guy, even though I'm a giant war gamer.
Yeah.
There's a reason that I do a Lorecast. I'm very into the story and stuff, and I want it to feel that way when you're playing.
Right.
And this would be large battles. It'd be big.
Yeah.
And what you want it to feel like is also battles that change the setting almost. Who wins this makes a big difference. It's the Battle of the Dam. It completely changes what's going on. That's what you want this battle to feel like, not just we met. And the thing is that Wasteland Warfare does a great job of doing small little things. But if you're playing a large war game, I want it to be those battles that change who's currently taking it controls sectors of the area.
Right.
The DC battles when they were going all the government buildings and stuff like that. Those were huge battles that were really going into who controlled what. When the Brotherhood came in and they had the Brotherhood, you had the Brotherhood coming trying to kill all the Institute. It was a battle for who controls this area of the country.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of that. It's a lot of, yes.
Yeah. These are the battles that you would play in a Fallout larger war game on that you want these battles to feel like, okay, this is for the control of the greater DC area. This is the control of Vegas. This is control of, wherever you're doing it, you want to make it feel like a big play, and you can have scenarios on that. Hey, we're are going in and we're going to attack NCR. You know what I mean? Like what happens here? You know, who controls
What
it
are the
more?
stakes? Right.
But yeah, exactly. What are the
Yeah.
stakes on that? Like
Yeah.
you want it to feel like it really means not, it's just you and dog meat just hanging out. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Which is also cool.
Which is cool.
Wrong,
Like that's a fun D&D-esque kind of roleplay thing to do. Sure. But we're talking big, massive scales with actual real stakes. Yeah.
Right. I want it to not just feel like some guys met in a field and fought. I want it to be
right.
What happened changes, over the course of it. That's how you want to make your battle feel.
Yeah. In fact, you could do a series of these where then you could revisit the same location with the changes on the map, and the team that won the previous fight gets to decide more about what changes on the map and sets up defensive structures, and the other team has to attack them. That kind of thing. That could totally play out. But here, I've got two other things I want to cover before we wrap this up. I think that we have to incorporate vault tech somehow, and vaults. I don't think that they are their own army or faction, but what I do think is that it needs to coincide with my other idea that is a big piece of Fallout, and it's scavenging. This idea that there are locations on the map where when you get to them, you can scavenge and you have a random chance of finding stuff that might be helpful. Whether that's...
I'm just embarrassed that I didn't even think of the fact that I kept talking about terrain.
Yeah,
and
you
bonuses,
put it on the terrain, right?
And then you're like, you're a fool, Brad.
So let's say you come across a red rocket and you scavenge and you find some stim packs, and all of a sudden your guys can heal. Or you find some weapons that are just like maybe somebody stashed in the basement of the red rocket, and so now all of a sudden they get upgrades to their weapons. Scavenging is a big part of Fallout, but I also think it would be really cool that vaults exist on the map somewhere, and either they are obvious or they're not, and scavenging reveals them, and they are an even more random chance thing. Maybe the vault is full of feral ghouls, and all of a sudden feral ghouls erupt onto the map, and now you got to deal with them. Or maybe there's a whole wealth of things down in that vault, and you come back and you are super equipped, and you have major bonuses because you went into that vault.
Then you'd also have to have people in your army that you could pay for that give you better chances of finding scavenged goods and vaults and stuff like that.
Right.
They could be very bad at other things.
Right, which plays into like the Brotherhood of the Enclave, who may be better at finding those locations because they want to find the tech. The Brotherhood wants to find the tech. The Enclave may already have information about where things like that are. But then, somebody like the Legion doesn't really know. So they don't really have as much of a chance of finding something.
Yeah, I love everything about that. I'm sad that you came up with it before I did. If I was editing this out, I would just put my voice over yours real quick.
just AI voice change us. I feel like, and then
that was definitely my idea. That was a great idea.
Yeah.
It's so I love it that I was like, hey. You should do all this stuff with the terrain, and then I skipped that, and you said that. I was like, "Oh, come on, Brad!
Yeah.
You're better than this."
Right? Yeah. Well, hey, it could play out in all sorts of different ways. And you could have more than one vault on a map if you wanted to. I don't know that vault tech necessarily makes sense for an army. I think that part doesn't work.
I like the idea
the
of
right
that.
way.
The thing is they never been an army, really.
Right.
You should get bonuses for it. I do like the random aspect, but I do think that, and that was one of the things I was saying when we first started about the Fallout terrain, the setting, is it needs to feel Fallout. It has to have I would love to have bonuses for vaults. You definitely have to have scavenge pieces. When you first go into a piece of terrain, there should be a chance that there is something there, whether it's bad, whether it's good, whether it's anything. I love that idea. On that, you could have a chart of it. You know what I mean? Then again, you could have bonuses depending on what faction you are. Again, the Enclave, much better at knowing where things are. Hey, Raiders have a 1 in 20 chance of finding something. They don't know where anything is.
They're all doped up and they don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
super mutants,
they could be standing in it. They don't know.
Yeah, but maybe super mutants find things that other people can't use. Like, oh, you found the fender of a car. And an NCR is going to be like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with that right now. I'm in the middle of a battle. It's a fender of a car. But the super mutant picks it up and now it's his melee weapon. And like, okay, cool. That works differently for that faction as well. Maybe the monsters just ignore and don't scavenge at all. So it's just off the table for them.
They could also just not get affected by the bad things.
Right. You come across monsters in a forest and they leave you alone because
Because you're a monster.
Because you're a monster. They don't care. Yeah, like, man, you could balance this out in all sorts of... Okay, so now that we've brainstormed this up, how do we contact Modiphius and say, hey, let's expand Wasteland Warfare into a massive warfare type game with all of our new ideas, and then you pay us lots of money?
I would love that. Listen to this and message us. We will help you make this a giant war game.
Yes, that would be awesome. And then we'd have to set up some tournaments, and then everybody listening to this episode can get their own armies, and we can set up a big, maybe we can have like a Fallout warfare convention every year where everybody comes and brings their armies and we see what happens. That would be a ton of fun.
I love it. I love the idea of this. I'm already excited for this make-believe thing we talked about. So I'll be juiced about this for the rest of the day.
Awesome. Any final ideas? Anything else to throw in there before we wrap this up?
Balance. That's probably why they haven't done it already.
Yeah.
It's very hard to balance all the factions we said on a large scale. It's very easy to balance right now they're doing individual activations. When you're talking at huge armies, it's very tough to make sure that everybody's army is playable.
Yeah. Well, you just use the 40K rules and just replace unit for unit. I'm sure Games Workshop would love that.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, Games Workshop, I'm so sorry. Don't send somebody over here.
No. Okay, don't do that. That's a bad idea. Make your own stuff. But yeah, well, thank you so much, Brad. This has been super fun. I knew this would be a fun conversation to bring you in on. And on the show, I love to talk about lore and established stuff, but I always love thinking outside the box a little bit, because Fallout works in so many ways that we haven't seen yet. Different types of games and all sorts of stuff. So who knows? Maybe we'll get more and more developed versions of different kinds of ways to play Fallout, including a war game in the future. So that would be cool. But hey, how do people find your stuff? Where do they go for more Brad?
40klorecast.com has the links to pretty much everything I'm doing. So just go there, find me. You've got the history of 40K. You've got 2 Men and a Handler, which I'm going to be throwing up soon. And I'm in a lot of guest hosts and a lot of 40K things, but that is main thing. Just go to 40klorecast.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and
appreciate you having me.
Yeah, good luck with the shows, and I'm sure I'll see you around pretty soon. All right. Thanks again to Brad for joining me. We've got to go over our new patrons. We've got new people who signed up. Ben from the Mountains, C Combat 6, and Ladonbo. Welcome to the Patreon. So glad that you're here. If you'd like to get ad-free episodes or join us for patron chats or t-shirts and stickers, all sorts of fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/FalloutLorecast. And you could also sign up as a sentry bot like Germinator, who gets a shout out every week. Thanks, Germinator. Plus, we've got some new reviews on Apple Podcasts in the US. If you leave a 5-star review, I will read it out on a future episode, like this one from Ben from the Mountains, who just joined us on the Patreon, who says, "Love it, 5 stars. I drive all day for work, going all through North Carolina, and I'm constantly trying to find podcasts to get into. This show has had me stuck for the last 2 weeks. Informative, nostalgic, and more than anything, entertaining." Thanks so much, Ben. And then this one from The Bearded PR, who says, "Thank you. I'm one of those perfectionists. I collect everything. I 100% the games, and I thought I knew everything. Well, you proved me wrong, LOL. I love the podcast and binged it in a month. I'm finally caught up. Loved listening to your predictions on things that came out already for me, and some were close, and some would have been better than what actually happened. I do have a suggestion for a new segment, rare items and why they're rare. I did say I'm a collector, but I never could find why certain things are so rare, like clothing or plans that have a 0.002% drop rate. Is there lore behind it, or just a dev choice to give us those white whales? But thank you for sticking in there and giving us so much. I know you had it had to be hard when back in the beginning. We appreciate you." Well, thank you so much. And I think your gut is probably right about a lot of those like 0.002% drop rate items, and it's more for the gamification of stuff and less about how rare they would actually be in the world, although some of them might actually be that rare. But that's interesting. It would be worth diving in there and seeing if those things actually do line up, or which ones do line up. That would be really cool. So thank you so much, The Bearded and Ben from the Mountains, and everyone else who helps support the show and shares it with your friends and all of that stuff. Thank you for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And until next time, if you come up with other really cool wargaming ideas, hit us up. Comments or join the the Discord and let us know your thoughts, because it would be really fun to put together. Even, I don't know, maybe there's a way to 3D print our own models or something, or use the Modiphius models and come up with our own rule sets. I don't know, that'd be kind of cool. So let me know what you think. And until next time, stay safe in the wasteland. I'll see you then. To plug into everything else we're doing, check out robotsradio.net. Reach out to me on Twitter at robots_radio. Check out the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where you can join me and a bunch of our other creators creating your podcast, starting a new podcast, or helping your current podcast grow. There's more information about that on robotsradio.net as well. And you can always talk with us and the entire community, over 2,000 people on the Robots Radio Discord. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you. See you guys next time.